I remember the evening like it was yesterday. I had been looking forward to a quiet night after a long week, hoping for some connection, some small reminder that the life we built together still held warmth. My name is Adrian. I'm 38, and I've been married to Felicity for nearly 12 years. For the first few years, our relationship was effortless. Playful texts during the day, small gestures of affection, weekend trips that felt like mini escapes. We had a rhythm, a spark that made the everyday challenges seem manageable. I was never the loudest person in the room, but I took pride in being steady, reliable, the kind of partner who carried his weight without complaint. Felicity often said she liked that about me, that she could count on me, that she felt safe with me. But somewhere along the way, things shifted. It wasn't dramatic. There were no fiery arguments, no betrayals, no obvious turning points. It started with small withdrawals, a laugh that felt forced, a touch that lingered less, evenings when she'd retreat into her phone instead of conversation. I noticed these signs, of course. I tried to brush them off, reminding myself that stress at work, family responsibilities, and the ordinary grind could take its toll. I tried to compensate, making dinners, running errands, even taking over household chores quietly, hoping that presence and effort would eventually be reciprocated. One Thursday night, I decided to step out of routine. I had planned a quiet dinner, simple candles, soft music, and a gentle reminder that we were still in this together. Felicity had been unusually distant that day. She came home, not with a smile, but with an exhausted sigh, sinking into the couch like she carried invisible weights. I approached her gently, placing my hand on her back. I tried to initiate what had once been a simple, warm routine, an embrace, a touch on her shoulder. And then she froze. Her eyes flickered briefly with surprise, then hardened. "Don't touch me," she said, her voice firm but not angry. "I'm not your wife tonight." I paused, a small smile creeping onto my face, not because I was laughing at her, but because of the clarity that suddenly washed over me. I could feel my chest tighten, not with fear, not with anger, but with a strange, sharp awareness. She wasn't rejecting me in anger. She wasn't venting or lashing out. She was indifferent. She had emotionally removed herself, and for the first time, the illusion of our shared connection fell away entirely. I stepped back, giving her space, my smile never fading. "Good," I said softly, almost to myself, and that simple acknowledgement changed everything. There was no argument, no negotiation, no pleading, just truth, raw and undeniable. I realized then that love isn't just about giving. It's about being seen, valued, and wanted. I had been pouring into a vessel that no longer had the capacity to hold me. Over the next few minutes, I allowed myself to reflect without judgment. Our life together had been filled with countless small gestures, moments that once meant the world. I remembered the quiet mornings when she would rest her head on my shoulder, the nights we stayed up talking about dreams, fears, ambitions. Those memories contrasted starkly with the present, emphasizing the slow erosion that had led us here. I felt the weight of years, the shared routines, the loyalty, and the countless attempts to bridge a gap that had quietly widened. The house was silent except for the soft hum of the heater and the occasional creak of the floorboards. I moved deliberately, not out of anger, but out of acceptance. I gathered a few essentials, a change of clothes, my laptop bag, my journal. No one was watching, no one was asking questions. There was nothing to defend, nothing to justify. I wasn't running. I was simply stepping out of a life that had stopped reciprocating. I walked through the door, the cool evening air a stark contrast to the stifling quiet of the living room. It hit me how much clarity comes from stillness, from removing yourself from a dynamic that drains rather than nurtures. I drove to my friend's apartment a few blocks away, my mind buzzing, not with chaos, but with a calculated calm. When my friend asked what had happened, I simply said, "She's not present. I'm done trying to convince her." Over the next few days, I noticed the subtle power of absence. Felicity continued her routines as if nothing had changed. There were no calls, no texts, no inquiries. And yet, for me, the world had shifted. I found space to breathe, to think, to remember who I was outside the confines of a relationship that had quietly decayed. I realized that sometimes love isn't about holding on, but about knowing when to release. And release doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be quiet, deliberate, and dignified. That night, as I lay on my friend's couch, I allowed myself a rare moment of introspection. I thought about the years I had given, the loyalty, the patience, the countless attempts to reconnect. And then I thought about the future, a life where my presence would be respected, my efforts appreciated, and my value acknowledged. The smile I had given her earlier lingered, a subtle reminder that I had not reacted with anger or desperation, but with clarity. A week later, Felicity reached out, not directly to me, but through the briefest of gestures, a text asking a logistical question about bills. I responded calmly, succinctly, and without emotion. The dynamic had shifted entirely. I was no longer chasing approval or affection. I was simply existing in my own space, in my own truth, and that made all the difference. Reflecting on that night, I understand now that there are moments in life when detachment is the ultimate act of self-respect. When someone withdraws, intentionally or unconsciously, the power lies not in confrontation, but in measured response. My smile that night was not arrogance. It was understanding. It was acknowledgement of a reality I could no longer change, an acceptance that my energy deserved reciprocity. Love, I realized, can fade quietly. It can be subtle in its absence, persistent in its erosion. And yet, leaving with dignity, leaving without malice, can be profoundly liberating. That simple evening, that single sentence, became a turning point, not a finale, but a beginning. A beginning of clarity, self-awareness, and the slow reclamation of my own life. Now, months later, I look back not with bitterness, but with a sense of quiet strength. I learned that boundaries are not just rules, they are declarations of self-worth, that a partner's indifference does not diminish your value, and that sometimes smiling in the face of rejection is not weakness, but the purest form of courage. I don't speak to Felicity about that night anymore. I don't need to. It exists in memory, in the way I hold myself now, in the calm, deliberate steps I take toward a life that reflects who I truly am. And every time I think about it, I remember the words she spoke, the line she drew, and the smile I returned. It wasn't the end of love. It was the start of something far more important. The beginning of self-respect, clarity, and the kind of peace that only comes when you stop convincing someone to see your worth and start living it for yourself.